Hey, it's me, Raika. Today we're going to have a look at the brand new Lightbearer hero, Ginneas, Heart of Moltenflow. Now, this hero wears plate-based gear, is part of the tank class, and his primary role is to provide a significant amount of control for your teammates. So let's have a look at his skills. His ultimate skill, Let It Smash, which has a passive and an active component to it. The passive component, Ginneas' Burst Hammer can hold shells. When he deals damage with his skill, shells will be consumed to increase his damage. So shells are little icons that will appear above the character model as soon as Ginneas walks onto battle. The active, or when he uses his ultimate ability, Ginneas loads his burst hammer. So this is the little hammer that Ginneas carries with him. He loads this hammer with shells, then swings and deals AoE damage 3 times, knocking enemies into the air and stunning them briefly. He is immune to control effects while using the skill. Level 2. At the start of battle, Ginneas has 6 shells. Level 3. When shells are consumed, the damage dealt by Ginneas ignores enemies' dodge. So this will be similar to Brutus's Roar. However, this will only be active for Ginneas himself. So the next ability over here is Hefty Smash. Ginneas smashes enemies within a certain range in front of him with his burst hammer, dealing damage and reducing the enemy's haste by 40 points for 5 seconds. The level 2, this will be the damage of this ability will be increased. The level 3, if shells are consumed. Ginneas stuns enemies close to the center of the hammering point for 2.5 seconds. Enemies are stunned for 3 seconds now, so essentially this is a slight buff to this ability over here, and also it significantly controls the enemies when he uses this specific skill. His next ability, Crushing Mockery. Ginneas charges into the enemy formation, dealing damage and taunting nearby enemies. So essentially he'll force the enemies to attack Ginneas over here. While taunting, he's immune to control effects and receives less damage. So when he uses his taunt, this will be for 6 seconds. Ginneas will be immune to control and receives 50% less damage for that specific duration. After the taunt ends, he grants fearless shields to all allies, dealing damage to nearby enemies and knocking them airborne. The level 2, allied heroes protected by fearless shields receive 25 points of healing points when a fearless shield ends. Its remaining value is converted into healing for the shield wielder. The level 4 or 30 engravings, all remaining shields are consumed for the first damage dealt, which also increases damage reduction during the taunt period. His next ability, Meteor Supernova. Ginneas deals damage to enemies in front of him twice. If shells are consumed for the first damage instance, he destroys enemy shields and grants himself a fearless shield. If shells are consumed for the second damage instance, Ginneas knocks the enemy airborne and stuns them. So this stun will be for 2 seconds. The level 2, the damage of this ability will be increased, and the level 3, enemies are stunned for a significantly longer time. So this goes from 2 all the way to 2.5 seconds. And the 60 engravings, for every 6 shells consumed. Ginneas grants his ally that has dealt the highest damage a fearless shield that can mitigate damage equal to 35% of Ginneas' max health for 7 seconds. So this is a pretty significant shield, especially if you have a slightly weaker damage dealer in the back line or in the front line as well. So let's have a look at his signature item, Overload. When you unlock his signature item, each time shells are consumed, the damage dealt this time is increased by 80% of Ginneas' attack rating. The level 10, each time shells are consumed, this damage is increased by 100%. The level 20, Ginneas' normal attack is enhanced, dealing rippling damage or AoE damage for 90% of Ginneas' attack rating to the target and enemies behind him. The level 30, when Ginneas receives damage that exceeds 20% of his max health, he takes 90% less damage and loads 1 shell. This effect can trigger 1 time every 6 seconds. So this is a pretty significant amount of damage reduction that he can acquire when he gets his 30 signature item. So let's have a look at his furniture. Moltenflow Soul. The 3 out of 3 unlock. For every 1 shell consumed, Ginneas receives 1 stack of Will of Steel. Each stack of Will of Steel increases the damage he deals by 3% and reduces the damage he takes by 3% as well. This effect can be stacked up to 20 times. So this is essentially 60% damage reduction and 60% increased damage to all of his abilities. His next ability at 9 out of 9, at the start of battle, Ginneas has 5 stacks of Will of Steel, while other allies with a fearless shield will also gain damage buffs and damage reduction corresponding to the current number of stacks of Ginneas of Will of Steel, up to 12 stacks. So this is a pretty significant amount of damage reduction and damage increase that he can provide for his allies. So let's have a look at how he does in battle. Now, because his stacks take a while to essentially stack up, I would highly recommend essentially putting him with another support or tank that can essentially buy Ginneas a bit of time so he can start providing all of his control and buffs for his allies. So in this battle over here, I'm going to pair Ginneas up with Aona. Now, Aona will provide a shield for Ginneas, allowing Ginneas to essentially buff up his allies even further. So let's put a couple of supports and damage dealers as well. So when we start a battle, we can see immediately starts off a couple of shells. Then he charges the enemy formations and immediately starts using his abilities. As you can see, each time he uses one of his abilities, he empowers them with the shells that he acquires. In addition, he'll constantly keep buffing up his allies through his respective abilities. There we go. Now, because this battle was extremely short, this didn't allow Ginneas to stack up his Wall of Steel and to buff up his allies' damage even further. So let's have a look at the damage statistics over here. So as we can see, he did provide a bit of healing and damage as well. So let's have a look at how he does at much higher level deficits. Now, he is not that sturdy compared to other tanks. However, if you give him a bit of time in order to stack up his damage abilities, he can be extremely useful ally that can help out your allies in battle. Now, once again, I've paired him up with Aona over here. This is essentially to give him a bit of damage reduction. There we go. He's walking on to battle with Aona over here. Then he immediately uses his shells, charges the enemy formations, and starts immediately interrupting the Odin. This can be crucial, especially if you have a backline damage dealer such as Awakened Belinda, who can essentially buff up Belinda's damage, and Ginneas can immediately distract, stun, and control the enemies with his taunt. There we go. We have claimed victory over the opponent. Now, he did do a bit of damage, however, it's not as significant as the other damage dealers in the team. Now, if we have a look at other teams over here, such as this one over here, now this is a heavy control-based team. He can be extremely potent, especially with his additional stun effect that can be super powerful, especially when you combine it with heroes such as Awakened Brutus over here. So, what is the minimum investment that I would recommend into this hero over here? Now, I would highly recommend getting his 30 out of 30 signature item. The reason for this, he can reduce damage up to 90% less damage, and he also gains these shells, which empower his abilities and supercharge himself and his allies. And this effect can trigger one time every 6 seconds. So essentially, he can proc this ability multiple times throughout the duration of battle. Now, the next thing that I'll also recommend getting him is his 9 out of 9 furniture. Now, it does require to stack this furniture up. Essentially, over time, you'll build up stacks of Will of Steel, and once you have those 12 stacks, you can get a massive amount of damage buffs, such as 36% damage increase and 36% damage reduction. Now, you can pair him with multiple other heroes. However, he does require a bit of time in order to build up. Now, I do not recommend getting his 30 or his 60 engravings, as they do not provide a significant benefit